Chair. Actually, after more research, what we have found is that Jordan Edwards actually lived in Representative Burkett's district, but the incident happened in my district, as well as he attended high school in Representative Victoria Naive's district. But as Chairwoman has stated, this is not just a Balk Springs problem, a Mesquite problem. This is a nation's problem, and we must address it immediately. As I stated in my remarks yesterday on the House floor, it is the Texas legislature who can put an end to these incidents. I feel it is very imperative that we pass laws and legislation that will stop these incidents. We are the ones who can make this happen. I have been in contact with the family through my office. At this current time, they're not receiving any more visitors because they're just overwhelmed with the amount of support that has been given to them. I would like to also applaud Balk Springs Police Department and Chief Caver. You know, a lot of times when these incidents happen, one of the things that happen is no results. And I would like to commend them for immediately jumping in there and making sure that what needs to happen with this situation has happened. Once they found the correct actions that were taken during this incident, the department acted accordingly, I should say. And so I'm just here to say that I just want to encourage my colleagues to let us continue to support legislation. There is currently legislation pending that will help with these incidents, to help us stop them. And I just hope that we will rally around that legislation and support it, and in the future continue. I know the fight may not be able to be completed this legislative session, but hopefully next session we will be able to get something done that will help in decreasing these incidents. Thank you.
Thank you. We've been joined by Representative James White, and I'd like to now give the opportunity to Representative Rafael Anchia of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus to say a few words.
Thank you, Rafael Anchia, Chairman of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. I'm really proud to stand with our brothers and sisters in the Texas Legislative Black Caucus on this incredibly sad occasion. And as we have been looking at the first 100 days of the new administration, during that period, that same period where we were sort of marking political accomplishments or defeats, over 80 African Americans have been killed by police during that same period. Yet that is underreported, under-acknowledged, and underappreciated. And if we are based on media reports and police reports, I think Chairwoman Giddings described it appropriately. But I want to give you a sense, members of the media, of what happened. You had innocent young men in a car who were trying to leave a party where gunshots had occurred. They had done nothing. They were upstanding members of society. They were honor students. And Mr. Oliver, in violation of every police protocol possible, raised a high-powered rifle to the car as it sped away from him and shot wildly and blindly, but in a deadly fashion, into the car. That car contained children. Jordan Edwards bled out in front of his brothers. And then without remorse, his brothers weren't consoled. They weren't helped. People did not come to their aid. Instead, they were put in cuffs. This is a breakdown of every possible standard operating procedure, every possible best practice in policing, and every conceivable common sense. There was no trial here. There was no opportunity to find these kids actually innocent. Mr. Oliver simply raised his rifle to a car full of kids and took deadly aim. And that, I don't think any of us can countenance, any of us can understand, and any of us can support. And we are noting very importantly, let me back up. We are asking, we're begging state leadership to speak up on this issue. We need a much more forceful response from the leaders of each of the chambers of the legislature and from the governor. The evidence and the scope of this problem is staggering. And we, instead of muted responses, we need full-throated responses to deal not only with this situation, but as Chairwoman Giddings suggested, with this broader problem, that there are bills in the legislature, sponsored by many of the members behind me, that should be immediately moved to the floor so that these things don't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Anchia, and we're joined by Representative Joe Desatel of Beaumont. We would now, pardon me, like to have remarks from Senator West, and he will be followed by Representative Garnet Coleman, and then we will have just brief remarks from Yanis Banks from the NAACP in that order, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman Giddings and colleagues. I'm calling on the President of the United States to look at this issue and make a statement about what he will do to make America great again. Black lives do matter. There's not a person in this room or the sound of my voice that would think that this would occur in an Anglo community. I'm playing the race card, I'm playing the reality card. If you had Anglo males, teenagers, leaving a party, do you think a police officer in that community would wildly shoot into a car going away from him? I'm calling on law enforcement that continuously ask us to help them with pension funds, a host of legislation. I know they feel conflicted because it's one of their brothers that's involved in this action. I'm calling upon law enforcement to make a statement about this, recognizing that you have somewhat of a conflict. Make a statement about this. Yes, Blue Lives Matter, and we've celebrated Blue Lives down here this week, but also Black Lives Matter, especially our children. It's incredulous that the first response, as reported by the media, of this officer was to lie. Think about that. Think about the police report that was authored by this officer and the other officers on the scene. The first response was to lie about it. Had there not been independent video evidence of what occurred, that officer would not have been fired because it would have been a credibility issue. He say, she say, we give the benefit to law enforcement, which we want to give the benefit to law enforcement. But thank God that that officer had a body camera and that there was a dash camera out there as a result of legislation that we passed. I called today for the governor to look at this, and I think that we need to make certain we meet with the governor and ask him to make certain we're deploying body cameras throughout the state of Texas, to make certain that there's independent evidence that fact finders can look at to make a determination of what has occurred or what will occur in these instances where we have deadly violence. I know the governor's talked about different emergency items, and those issues have been set forth to the legislature. I would hope that the governor would look at these issues and the legislation that's being proposed by this legislative body and join us in making certain that we pass legislation. From the Sandra Bland Act, the Community Safety Act, and several other pieces of legislation that we have pending. But let it not go unsaid. that we, not knowing Jordan Edwards personally, have sons, grandsons like Jordan that may very well be in the same or similar situation, and he was doing what was right, along with his brothers and others in that car, running away from trouble as opposed to be getting involved in trouble. And as a result of doing the right thing, he lost his life. His brothers and others were detained, which is another story that hopefully we will ultimately get to the bottom of. And again, those persons that was with that officer that were complicit in allowing a fake, fraudulent police report to be filed should be held equally accountable under the laws of party in the state of Texas. I'm confident that the District Attorney's Office and the Dallas County Sheriff's Office will do a thorough investigation and will leave no stone unturned as it relates to what actually occurred.
Thank you, Chairwoman Giddings, for putting this press conference together. When I read about this incident, and while working on the Sandra Bland Act, I went and met with the Speaker. And I said to him, I said, you know, we're all trying to find a way to hug each other and make sure that we are in support of good policing and in support of protecting the public. It was very clear that this incident was not only a tragedy, but this shows that there's some training that needs to be done, and additional training. And the police chief did an excellent job of responding to the situation. But the first story out was the story given by the officer, which was not true. And so he had to come back and say, no, that wasn't true. So how many times has this happened where someone has had to come back and say, no, I'm sorry, that story wasn't true? So last week in Houston, as Ms. Thompson says. So we all want to do the right thing. We want to support clearly Royce's legislation on flak jackets, better body armor, looking at what the police do when it's their duty to protect themselves and others. But this was not that case. And that says that we need to pass the bills that Royce West has, bills that I have, Ms. Thompson, also bills that James White has. These are bills that will make a difference in the future. So thank you for letting me speak.
Yanis Banks of the NAACP.
And our condolences are going out to the family. We congratulate the representatives behind us who have filed these bills to bring better protections and safety to our community. Our Dallas branch has been on top of this since it happened. Our branch there, they've had a town hall with the family and the lawyer. Our national office come down, our CEO was there last night at the prayer vigil, and our national office also are doing direct action training on the community, because we understand how important this issue is. It's sad to continue to read and hear about these stories about young, unarmed African-American men and women, children being shot down, and nothing is happening. We agree that the Attorney General should be involved from the United States. They can come down and do an investigation. The DOJ, we're asking for them to come down and do an investigation. It's sad that it's been quiet from the governor and lieutenant governor and other state leadership about these incidents that keep happening. I think a lot of people in this room, in the community, are getting sick and tired of hearing these stories, the same stories of kids who have promising futures being shot down and nothing's happening. Nothing is being done. And we have these legislators behind us who keep fighting for change and not getting much support. And it's getting sad, it's getting tired. And I think we're tired of it. So we're asking for all good-natured people to understand this is not just a black thing, it's not just a brown thing, it's not just a poor thing, this is an everybody thing, this is a Texas thing, this is a United States thing. We need to come together and rally behind our legislators and those who are trying to make a difference in the community, and make sure that people are held accountable for their actions. Because we can't just let them keep doing this, and it's just the same old, same old. It's getting the same old tired. Thank you.
I want to also give Chris Turner, the chair of the Democratic Caucus, an opportunity to speak. And if we go long, we're not apologizing. This is the kind of thing that we ought to go along for.
Thank you, Chair Giddings. I'll be brief. Yesterday, the Texas House observed a moment of silence after Representative Rose and others very eloquently and powerfully talked about this incident and remembered the life of this young man, Jordan Edwards, that was so tragically taken this past weekend. And it was right that the House paused and remembered and observed a moment of silence. But this House and this legislature and our entire state leadership needs to do so much more. It's not simply enough to send our thoughts and prayers. We need action. We need to pass Representative Coleman's Sandra Bland Act. We need to pass the other measures you've heard about this morning from Senator West and others. Because this can't go on. This is intolerable that this is happening in 2017. And what the senator said was right. If this was a group of white kids, this would have had the story would have had a different ending. And the truth of the matter is, people who look like me don't have to have the same types of talks with our kids that my colleagues have to have with theirs and with their grandkids. And that's not right. And we need our leaders to take a stand against this kind of intolerable action that is happening far too often in this country. Starting with President Trump and the Attorney General of the United States and the Governor of Texas and the Attorney General of Texas, the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House. They need to speak out and they need to act. We have less than 4 weeks left in this legislative session. We have serious, thoughtful, meaningful criminal justice reforms and accountability measures before the House and the Senate that you've heard about today. We need to pass those measures if we're serious about addressing this issue. If it's only thoughts and prayers, then that says this legislature and this leadership is not serious.
As I thought about the life of Jordan, I thought about my own 2 grandsons who will be graduating from college in the next 2 weeks. One of them is named Jordan. This could have easily been one of my grandsons. My family is all excited about the graduation of these 2 young men. This family will never have the opportunity to feel the excitement that we feel about their graduation. This young man had a promising future. He was an honor student, and he will never live out his full potential. He had apparently the potential to do everything. In closing, the Texas Legislative Black Caucus calls for a thorough and complete investigation from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, from the District Attorney's Office, and once again, we're calling on the leadership, the Speaker of the House, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Governor to understand that this is a crisis that cannot go on. You know, we cannot let this young man's life end this way in vain. And each of us here is committed to doing everything within our power to stop this kind of senseless killing. It really is murder at the end of the day. We will take a few questions.
Why are the Rangers or somebody else investigating this besides Dallas County Chairwoman? Or anybody who else wants to answer that?
Why are they not?
Yeah, why are they not? Everyone's surprised in Dallas that Dallas County Sheriff's Office is investigating this rather than another outside agency like the Rangers would normally do in these cases.
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think that's one of the things that we're going to be getting involved in and asking about, getting the involvement of the Rangers.
Can you tell us the status also of the Sandra Bland Act and the Community Safety Act?
Let me very quickly have,
Thanks. Senator Whitmire passed out the Sandra Bland Act out of committee on, I think it was Tuesday or Monday, I can't remember. We are to pass the Sandra Bland Act out of the Homeland Security today. Clearly, the legislation, unfortunately, is not as robust as we filed it, but we do have language about outside investigation of events that occur by another agency that other than the one where the incident where the incident was part of their job. So we'll continue to move the legislation. And actually, that's what I was in the Speaker's office talking about, and I had learned of the event in Dallas through the Washington Post, as a matter of fact, and said, you know, hey man, we have really got to do something. We can't just talk about it. And after the passing of the Senate Bill 4, it even becomes more imperative because that's how this happens. Using stops to investigate, and then they escalate. In this case, there wasn't even a stop.
The Community Safety Act has been passed by the Senate. It was passed 31-0, and it's awaiting hearing in the House.
Could you provide a quick synopsis of how the pieces of legislation that's pending you think can address this problem, this disease, as Representative Giddings pointed out that it is?
I have a bill 2044 that can do it. And let me tell you what it's gonna take to get it passed. It's gonna take the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker to take their heads off the sand and get it done. And recognize that African Americans are part of this society and we ain't going away. And our safety is just significant as any other person. And I applaud the police department that fired that officer, but I'm hoping that they don't pass him along to another department in our state or any other state where he would be able to repeat the same kind of conduct.
What is 2044?
It is a bill that deals with de-escalation of force. When a police officer comes upon a scene and there is no imminent threat to the life of the police officer, he doesn't have to use deadly force because there's no need of it.
And that's in the Sandra Bland Act as well.
It just seems as though in this particular case, there was no threat. The car was driving away. Raphael, Representative T already said he broke policy. So is there anything that you will have to address not getting these bad apples, so to speak, into the department in the first place?
They can do that right now. The district attorney's office can do that right now. There are things already in the police policy that they can do and act upon without having to pass additional pieces of legislation. It depends upon the district attorney. And they have to come forward and stop protecting officers when they do things wrong. We want every officer, when they walk out their door for any shift that they work on, to be able to walk back in their door just like they left it. But we also want the citizens to be able to have that same opportunity too.
And it gets down to, again, recruitment and making certain that those individuals are screened properly before giving a badge and having the power of life and death. It gets back to the same things we've been talking about over and over and over and over and over again. The same thing.
and we do have a couple of pieces of legislation. One requiring the mental evaluation of police officers, and on that one we do have the governor's support. And I know that Representative Jarvis Johnson has a bill too, because too often I think what is happening is the people are not completely and thoroughly vetted and investigated and before they are allowed on the police force. That seems to be a major problem.
I have a question for Senator West. Did any of this come up when you were negotiating with law enforcement and getting them to support your VEST bill, or was that strictly a pro-law enforcement?
That was, no, it did not come up. It was a pro-law enforcement bill. But I assure you that as we discuss pensions and benefits, it's coming up. I assure you that.
Yeah, it
Do you-
just seems, following up on it, just seems like it's like such a back to blue kind of legislative
Well,
session.
it's back to blue, and I don't have a problem with that. We
But
want
where's
law
the,
enforcement.
where's the other, I mean, all your
counter
bills
balance.
seem to be kind of stuck and waiting for committee hearings, at least on the House side.
Well, James,
So-
the Senate passed my bill
Right.
31-0. And of course, the House has to act. And we've had a hearing on the Sandra Bland bill in criminal justice, so it's just waiting to vote there, so.
They voted out.
It was voted out.
I was gonna ask as a follow-up, does that give you any kind of bargaining chip to get them to be supportive of any of this other
Well,
legislation?
I'm just hoping that they will do the right thing, okay? I mean, let's just do the right thing. I mean, if we back law enforcement, we want law enforcement to back us also. And when they see a situation that they know from their professional judgment is just wrong, they should say something about it. And they're conflicted, and I understand that. We're just as conflicted, because we back law enforcement. But law enforcement should be saying something about this particular incident, and other incidents that have occurred across this country.
I think in closing, let us say that this murder seems pretty clear. Someone who had committed no crime, someone who was leaving, retreating, if you will, and someone takes out a rifle. And generally speaking, there's a little bit of thought that goes into taking out a rifle. If you've got a gun on your hip, that's sort of a really quick thing. When you take out a rifle, that's an entirely different thing. This young man, both parents at home, not that that should matter, but a great student in school and whatever. And so our message is to the governor, the Speaker of the House, and Lieutenant Governor. There is nothing that we're doing in Austin, Texas, in terms of the legislature that is more important than eradicating this disease that is taking out these young, unarmed black men whose only crime seems to be being black in Texas and in America. We thank you.